Earlier this week, MAGA Speaker of the House Mike Johnson absolutely screwed the Trump campaign when he was caught on video saying that Donald Trump's administration would want to gut the ACA if Trump were to win. And that, of course, led the Trump campaign to panic, considering how popular the Affordable Care Act is. But Mike Johnson, for some reason, decided to double down on the damage that he did to Donald Trump because today he was caught on camera once again saying something equally or even more damaging than what he did earlier this week. And we are going to get into all of that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way and it really means the world to me. Now, before we get into what Mike Johnson had to say, I think it is important to lay out the stakes of why it was so damaging with a message Kamala Harris was delivering right here.
He said he was the only one, you know how he talks. He said he was the only one who could bring back America's manufacturing jobs. And then America lost nearly 200,000 manufacturing jobs when he was president, including thousands of jobs right here in Wisconsin. And facts be clear, those losses started before the pandemic, okay? Making Donald Trump one of the biggest losers of manufacturing jobs in America's history. It's the truth. And his track record for the auto industry was a disaster. As well, and so as president, he promised that the auto industry would not, quote, lose one plant during his presidency. Then American auto manufacturers announced the closure of 6 auto plants when he was president. Janesville, you know what those closures mean for communities. Thousands of union jobs lost. Factory sites sitting empty for years. Other businesses in town then forced to close. So Wisconsin, you know all about Donald Trump's big, empty promises. He promised to stop offshoring. Then he cut taxes. He cut taxes for corporations that shipped 200,000 American jobs overseas during his presidency. And he promised to bring jobs back to the United States, like his promise that Foxconn was going to invest $10 billion and create 13,000 manufacturing jobs in Mount Pleasant. You remember that? He said Wisconsin would soon be home to a manufacturing plant that he called, again, Donald Trump language, the 8th wonder of the world. Yet another empty promise. Typical for a person that is all talk, no walk.
In the closing days of this campaign, it really is all about the economy. And so Kamala Harris is driving home the message that, of course, she is better for business and is building an opportunity economy from the middle out, not the top down like Donald Trump wants to. And of course, we know Donald Trump's ridiculous tariff agenda would be incredibly damaging, but we don't just have to look to the future. We can look in the past at Donald Trump's economic failures and the manufacturing jobs that left the United States, as Kamala Harris laid out there. And of course, Donald Trump's horrible practices towards labor as well, which were brought up by Tim Walz in this clip, which again, I think it provides important context before we get into Mike Johnson.
So to those undecided folks, the only thing Donald Trump knows about working people and middle-class people is how to take advantage of them. That's his entire set of knowledge that he has. And he talks about this. He talks about manufacturing. The only thing he knows how to manufacture is bullshit, and he's continued to do it. And he's continued to do it. His presidency was an endless string of broken promises. He came, remember this, he came, I know the Congresswoman remembers this, said under his presidency, you won't lose a single plant. You won't lose a single manufacturing plant. And I said this, technically he did not lie. You lost 6 plants. Across the country, including right down the street in Warren. And that's one that he said you would not lose. Trump gave tax cuts to the very companies that shipped those jobs overseas. He encouraged automakers to move out of states like Michigan and move to anti-union states so they could save money and pay their workers less. he should probably have been able to figure this out. There's a reason that unions across Michigan, from the Teamsters to the laborers to the operating engineers to UAW, have endorsed Kamala Harris for president.
We have seen a boom in manufacturing jobs under the Biden-Harris administration, and of course the opposite happened under Trump's presidency, even though he said no manufacturing plants would leave the United States. And just like Tim Walz said, that was a bunch of BS. We knew that was going to happen, but what would happen if Donald Trump was elected? Again, what would happen to those manufacturing jobs that have come about through the Biden-Harris administration and the policies that they've been able to pass? Well, before we get into Mike Johnson, Donald Trump had a little bit of something to say. Trump on the Joe Rogan podcast taking issue with one of the best pieces of bipartisan legislation. Yes, 64 votes in the Senate from Republicans and Democrats, of course. Donald Trump is going after it. Legislation that created hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs and is incredibly popular and is important in making sure that we are building revolutionary technology in the United States. And what did Mike Johnson have to say about that exact bill and Donald Trump's position on it? Well, let's take a look.
The former president has said that he doesn't support the CHIPS and Science Act. You voted against it. If you have a Republican majority in Congress and Trump in the White House, will you guys try to repeal that law?
I expect that we probably will, but we haven't developed that part of the agenda yet. We got to get over the election first, and that's why.
Mike Johnson said that the CHIPS and Science Act, which is in part responsible for the addition of 800,000 new manufacturing jobs in the United States, including clean energy jobs, which if they weren't created here, would be shipped over to China. That's the bill that Mike Johnson wants to go after. Those are the achievements that Donald Trump wants to destroy from the Biden-Harris administration. This is devastating, and especially because of how many of those jobs are in Pennsylvania, are in Michigan, and are in Wisconsin. They're also in Arizona and Nevada as well. In the most important swing states in this election, Donald Trump is basically giving the manufacturing workers there the finger. This is the economy issue that Kamala Harris continues to talk about, that Donald Trump and his campaign are failing on, in no small part due to Mike Johnson. He just keeps on doing it. It would be better if he put his foot in his mouth. I was going to say he put his foot in his mouth. If he just shut up, it would be better for the Trump campaign, but I hope he doesn't, because he's really just making it clear what their economic agenda is. And President Obama was setting the record straight on what their economic agenda was in this clip right here.
Because he was a reality star on The Apprentice, there's some folks who think, well, I don't know, he's a businessman. He must know something about the economy. I've heard people say this, right? I'll talk to them. Why would you think about voting for this guy? Well, I remember the economy when he first came in. It was pretty good. Yeah, it was good because it was my economy. I had spent 8 years cleaning up the mess that the Republicans had left me. And then I handed over 75 straight months of job growth to Donald Trump. And all he did was give tax cuts to folks who didn't need it, drove up the deficit in the process, and now he wants to do it again. You can't give him credit for that. And then I hear, the other thing I hear, some folks will be like, well, Donald Trump sent me a check during the pandemic. No, y'all know, because I've heard this. I know y'all, some of you heard that. Hey, let me make sure y'all understand this. Joe Biden sent you a check during the pandemic, just like I gave people relief during the Great Recession. The thing is, we didn't put our name on it because it wasn't about feeding our egos. It wasn't about advancing our politics. It was about helping people. That's the difference. Don't be giving them credit for that. Come on. They sent you a check. Do not fall for that okie doke. Don't be bamboozled. Don't get fooled.
Donald Trump's life is a story of inheritance and loss, both with the wealth that came from his father and the economy that came from President Obama. Both Donald Trump destroyed because of his incompetence. So why on earth would we give him the chance to run the ship again when he already crashed it? And President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris had to fix it, especially when his economic agenda has gotten so much more extreme even since 2020. Just listen to what Mark Cuban had to say.
So here's the difference, another difference between Kamala and Donald, right? Donald says something and everybody else tries to explain what he really meant, right? He didn't really mean all these things. This is what he's suggesting, right? He's just hyperbole. Listen to what Kamala Harris says. What she says is what she's going to do.
But then you're not going to go back and look at Trump's 4 years compared to what the last 4 years that we've had.
But what about the years before
know
that?
We know what he did, and we know there were no hot spots around the world.
Then you're not talking about inheriting the Obama economy and what he did there. But look, Obama was the deporter-in-chief. He deported more people. What is specifically, Joe, my turn. Yeah. What specifically is he going to do for deportation? Is he going to get the National Guard?
I don't know how he's going to.
You don't think that's important?
No,
I am so glad that Mark Cuban is bringing this up, because it is this type of sane washing by the media that allows so many to think that, well, Donald Trump knows what he's talking about when it comes to the economy, because we always see journalists frame the nonsense things that he's trying to say as, oh, Donald Trump is being tough, he's being strong. No, his tariff policies wouldn't work. They would be a tax on working Americans, almost $4,000 or more a year, because Donald Trump is a madman who doesn't know what he's doing. And we have to continue to call that out. We cannot let that be sane washed. We're going to do that every single day on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.